Um, Now, what I wanted to do, and I do this in the foundations class, is I begin by telling students about how to use the Itil life cycle to think about building a house. And this is particularly true when we start talking about directing and the planning and implementation of a strategic change. If you think of the complexity of what it takes to build a house, from the conceptual part of the design through to actually building and laying out what the house is going to look like. And if you've ever seen a home being built, it's just an incredible orchestration of a ton of different vendors that all have to come in at the appropriate time in order to get a house completed in a timely manner. And so when we talk about directing and implementation, we need to kind of think about what the site foreman's role is in all of this, right? They're basically the program manager, the one that's watching many different projects being accomplished at the same time and is controlling the timing of the different vendors arriving on site, the different materials that are necessary, the delivery of those materials just in time. I mean, clearly, you can't bring everything that you need to build a house to that location. You wouldn't have enough space. So everything around the risk of managing something so complex, the skills and capabilities that are required to do all of this is what is under the control of the directing portion of a planning and implementation of a strategic change. So I wanted to kind of put that in your mind as thinking, how do we control all of that? If you look at building a service, right, all of the things that we have to do, bringing in the subject matter expertise, the resources, the server, the network, and the monitoring devices, all of this stuff, when we integrate something into an existing environment, can be quite complex. And so this part of the material is really around how do we put in place the successful part of directing all of this so that we get what we're expecting on time, within budget, and that it delivers the utility and warranty that we're expecting. Okay, so that's my visual image for as we go into this particular section. So I'm curious, what role does direction play in the successful implementation of strategic change? Just brainstorm. How does that help to make it more successful? What does it do in order, and we're specifically talking about IT here. Okay, defines the goal. What is the end game? That's interesting, Rob.
That's demo for people in the room here.
Demo.
Teaching them how.
Oh, gotcha. To get everybody else involved, I see.
Julie, I just asked a basic question, and Rob decided to take it overboard.
There we go. So someone has to pull the trigger, right? Someone has to be the person kind of guiding all of this. They help to define the goal. What is it that we're trying to achieve? Keeps the focus on the path. All of these things are true. There's no doubt that they play a significant role in ensuring the success of the strategic change. But also, I mean, other than defining the goal and the end game, what else does it do? I mean, think about this. What about in the scenario where we have competing projects that are looking for the same set of resources and capabilities. How does direction play a role in those competing interests? Absolutely, I agree with this one as well. Making sure quality is maintained, that the solution is mapping towards the requirements. This is huge, right? Because we can set the goal and put people in motion, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're actually going to get to the outcome. So we need the appropriate controls in place to make certain that we are tracking and aligning what we're doing with the expected outcome, as well as controlling and mitigating risks. You know, scheduling resources at the right time, the right amounts. Yes, they're going to do a lot of the conflict management that may occur, that the conflicts that naturally come out of organizations that tend to be running on, you know, the least amount of resources and capabilities as possible to keep things operational. So this role of direction is pretty important to ensuring the success of strategic change. There's where I was heading, eliminate roadblocks. Thank you. So when we talk about directing, service management requires us to guide, lead, and monitor those efforts that we're taking towards you know, leveraging service management. And this is not an insignificant thing, because I can tell you from my experience, this is one element that is generally missing in most Itil implementations. And what ends up happening is you get a lot of very good intentioned people trying to utilize service management to make a difference, but without the direction at the senior management level, what you end up getting is a lot of uncoordinated activities that aren't necessarily all moving towards the goals and objectives of what we're trying to achieve. So this is not an insignificant thing, and it's quite important when we begin putting all the pieces back together from a service management perspective, that we have some sort of a part of our organization that's looking at Itil holistically across the board and is beginning to tie these different groups together. In one of the other classes, Robin was able to pull in a, what does she call those, the co-pilots from another organization that I had actually worked with quite a few years ago, an insurance company. And it was kind of neat to have her on the call as we're going through, I think we were doing OSA or something, because I could kind of get a sense for what was going on in their organization after I had left. It had been probably 18 months since I had been there. And they had done a very good job of initially creating a service management organization, a cross-functional group for directing the success of service management. They had one focused on resource management, one on their enterprise apps, and another one on can't remember, oh, the PMO, like you guys have within your organization. So they kind of divided up this directing part of the organization into 4 critical areas. And when I asked how the service management implementation was going, she basically said that they were doing really good at the process level, but they were seeing the same breakdowns that they had before between functions were now existing between the phases of the life cycle. So even with good direction, right, and having a service management organization that's looking holistically at IT service management, you can still have breakdowns that occur between strategy and design, design and transition, transition and operations. And from the information that you guys conveyed to me, this is a significant area that needs to have improvement as you look at bringing a client on to the point where the contract is created, implementation occurs, and you kick into operational environment. So this directing part of the organization is what keeps the ball rolling through those different phases of the life cycle, providing direction, making certain that they are still aligning what needs to be done with what the business is looking at. So a very important part of this comes from direction. Now, having said that, most of what we look at from the success of bringing a service into the live environment, really our attention goes into the transition and planning and support process, which is the reason why I put the picture up there at the very beginning of a site foreman kind of orchestrating this very complex thing that we do within building a house. The transition planning and support process that we looked at as part of service transition is really where we get all this coordination of resources across the different phases of the life cycle. It's where we identify and manage the risks of the implementation, failure, potential disruption across multiple different business units. I mean, it is our way of managing holistically the transition and everything that goes into ensuring success within an implementation. So remember, the life cycle has two purposes. One is to figure out as an organization how to bring a service into the live environment the right way. The second part of this is how to create IT as a strategic asset. So as well as designing Itil, we also have to transition and manage the risks associated with leveraging Itil within our environment.